Welcome to the USS Silversides Submarine Museum, a museum dedicated to the efforts and accomplishments of the veterans who fought in World War II. The museum behind me is a 15,000 square foot facility. We are located at 1346 Bluff Street in Muskegon, Michigan, very close to Pier Marquette Park, and of course, right on the channel that connects Muskegon Lake to Lake Michigan. Currently, there is a course on World War II history being offered at the museum every Monday night from 6 till 9 p.m. Two instructors from Muskegon Community College have developed this course, and in cooperation with the college, the class is being offered here at the museum. Throughout the 15 weeks, each evening will have a different instructor, a different speaker, a different presenter with a specific expertise. The class is attended by students who have enrolled for credit, and the museum has made the offer to the community members to attend this lecture series if they so wish, and do so free, and of course donations are graciously and generously accepted. The topics throughout the course, if I may read from the notes that I have about the course, began on January 7th with the topic of From Versailles to Munich, talking about the transition from World War I to World War II. Subsequent weeks covered the topics of the German Blitzkrieg, crushing Poland, England stands alone, Hitler's dilemma, Operation Barbarossa about Russia, Pearl Harbor, awakening the sleeping giant, the Pacific Theater, defeating the Desert Fox, and Muskegon, the arsenal of democracy. We invite you to come to the Silversides Museum on Monday evening, beginning Monday, January 14th, 6 p.m., to enjoy a very interesting evening about World War II history.
Hello, welcome to the first lecture series that's co-presented by the U.S. Silversides Museum and Muskegon Community College. Tonight's lecture featured Mr. David Dejonge, and we're introducing World War II, starting with the prelude of World War I, and primarily the theme tonight is the Treaty of Versailles to Munich. So, tonight, our first speaker, David Dejonge. David, thanks for coming out to visit with us, and we appreciate everything you've got to share with our students.
Well, thanks. My name is David Dejonge. I'm a West Michigan resident, but do work globally. I run two nonprofit organizations. One is called Survivor Quest, based in Hudsonville, Michigan. The second is the National World War I Memorial Foundation in Washington, D.C. We're advocating for a National War Memorial on the National Mall. I am a photojournalist by trade and traveled the world documenting the last World War I survivors, and have unveiled my work in the Oval Office in the Pentagon. I did a project in '96 called Faces of Five Wars. I was inspired by my father, who was in the National Guard, and I have an uncle who's now passed on, was a torpedo bomber in the South Pacific. And I went and documented veterans from '96 to 1998, documented the veterans of West Michigan, and created an exhibit that was in the Van Andel Museum in Grand Rapids on the stories of 30 veterans of the 20th century. Two of those were World War I veterans. In 2006, I decided to document the last World War I survivors of the United States of America, which expanded eventually to the last survivors of the world. Worked with the United States Library of Congress Veterans History Project in tracking them down, worked with the Department of Veterans Affairs, also worked with the Pentagon, Department of Defense, Army, and a couple other government agencies, as well as Guinness Book of World Records, and a journalist from Texas, and ultimately located about 13 World War I veterans. Eventually, they all died off except for one, that is Frank Woodruff Buckles, America's last World War I veteran, who lived to be 110. I became his spokesman and handled the publicity and public relations for him. Yeah, the veterans that I got to interview and spend time with were really selfless servants. They were American patriots. It was never about bringing attention to themselves, but making sure that their generation wouldn't be forgotten. And that was a pretty incredible lesson to learn, to pass on to my children and my family. It should never be about us and what we do. It should be about what others do, and making sure that we honor and respect our elders. England lost the very last World War I veteran of the world was Florence Green of England. She served in the Royal Air Force. And as you lose that last breath, that last first-hand witness. The only thing that remains are the photographs, the audio recordings, and the video to tell that story. Aside from those portions that you can, aside from being able to access their story from that, the other lasting thing for their generation to constantly remind all around would be a lasting memorial somewhere that people can go and pay respects, honor to, and remember what occurred during those times of warfare. And that would be a memorial in Washington, D.C. Yeah, we're working towards, we just passed legislation for the Centennial Commission for World War I. Unfortunately, the senators removed the language for the memorials in Washington, D.C. and Kansas City. So we're starting from scratch again to reintroduce that law. We've got support of Congressman Huizenga here in West Michigan, but we need to gain support of our senators from the state of Michigan. Carl Levin and Debbie Stabenow need to support that law on the Senate side so that we can have a memorial to 5 million veterans of the United States. We also need to get that through Congress and Senate, and that's going to be a pretty big chore. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Every nation in the world has a national monument, national memorial to World War I, except for the United States of America. For 6 years, we've been lobbying our politicians, and for 6 years, we've continued to be turned down to have a memorial to them. Every year, Remembrance Day in England, which is our Veterans Day, used to be Armistice Day, millions turn out for moments of silence in England. And America needs to, you know, prepare for the centennial of World War I by preparing to have a memorial finally for 5 million veterans that served. Yeah, we're working on a documentary called Pershing's Last Patriot, as in General Pershing of World War I, and that's available at Pershing'sLastPatriot.com. You can take a look at the trailer there. We're trying to raise funds to complete that story so we can tell the story of Frank Buckles. We're a nonprofit organization working on that. That'll be about a 2-hour-long documentary when it's completed, and once we get through that, we'll have an accompanying book as well, but that's in the works. Yeah, we're always seeking artifacts. Letters, uniforms, helmets, anything we're always seeking. If it's not a family heirloom, we want to make sure first and foremost that if it's a family heirloom, it stays with the family. But if you don't have a place to go with your I don't know if you're picking that up. If you don't have a place to go with your items from military history, first check with your local museums, but our nonprofit organization can certainly use them as we go into schools. Hands-on items for students to be able to touch, look at, and experience are very helpful for us to pass on and let students use. Sure, they can contact me through frankbuckles.org, and there's a contact button right there, and any message that gets sent through that website will come directly to me. History matters to the public. History matters to America because it is the character that forged us and brought us to this point.